We are live. All right, folks. Hello. Welcome back to Search Geeks Speak. It's been what, a year and a half, Terry? It's been a while since we had this show rolling. We have another Friday show, obviously, but it's been a long time since we had this. So welcome back, folks. And it'll be an ongoing series, a couple times a month. We don't have the bandwidth to be doing this every week, but essentially we get different people on to come and give us their opinions. So I can shut up. It's like local. All right, so this week we got a couple to start us off. We brought some luminaries, and Terry's going to go talk to his oh man, those used to be the days. Anyways, all right, so we got Bill Slosky, writer over at SEO by the Sea, which I'm sure most of you know. If you don't, then I don't even know why you're here. And of course, he is the he's a head or lead SEO researcher at Go Fish Digital. So is that lead or head? Lead. Gotta be lead. No? What is it, Bill? Which one?
I'm sorry. I've got a incoming phone call that I don't recognize the number on. It was ringing over you.
Oh, it's okay.
I apologize for that.
That's probably SEO spam, just the old school way. I'm sure he was just probably, he can rank your website in the top of Google, I'll bet you.
The caller ID was saying it was store 6052, which means nothing to me.
Well, maybe but is that a ranking factor? Could we add it to the 202?
It's possible.
Anyway, so lead or head of research, SEO?
Director of research.
Director.
SEO,
See, I just did this.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you got the big bucks, folks, that's go hire him. And we got a new feller because Bill's on all our shows, and we're on all his shows, and we're just some happy family. We've got Ross Dunn with us this week from Step Forth. Hello, bro. Welcome to the family. Like, I think I've done more of your shows than you've done of mine, so thank you for dropping in.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I have high regard for you guys, so I'm always happy to come on.
It's
nice.
Awesome.
Again, I was just saying, it's nice to finally meet Bill, at least virtually. I know I've seen him at conferences, but I usually stay quiet.
Yeah, you only get giddy the first couple of times, my wife used to call it a man crush 10, 15 years ago. She's like, oh, it's Bill in your hangout? Oh, your man crush, Dave. And I'm like, shut up. But then, we've done some of these now. It's just old hats,
Yeah.
And of course, we got myself, Dave, SEO Training Dojo, and Terry Van Horn from SEO Pros, but we don't matter. All right, so the topic this week, guys, is just because, again, we got so little time on such a huge topic, is a lot of the younger people that I've run into different groups, including the dojo groups and guys I'm mentoring and stuff like that, is a twofold issue. Is the intake process, so we're not really going to get into the sales, folks, because I know a lot of you commented on the threads on Facebook. We're talking about the sales process, but that's a totally different animal. We'll save for another day. That's qualifying your clients and things of that nature. We're going to move past the sales process and get to the intake, to the quick wins, to the things coming out of the gate. So in the intake process, folks, we're going to be talking about different questions you want to ask clients once they're already sold to bring that process, get it started. And then we're going to move on to quick wins, which is another problem because a lot of guys are like, well, how do I show value in the first month or this and that? And they're scared and they're worried that they need to, and so we're going to go into that area. So we're just going to start off with the intake process. And I know, Bill, you and I have actually talked about this more than a few times the last little while in green rooms and other things. So I'm going to let you go first as far as some of your thoughts on what kind of things are important during the intake process once the client's been sold and they're handed off to you. What kind of things do you find are important to get them into?
Okay, so an initial kickoff meeting is your chance to actually talk to the people you're going to be working with. Introduce yourself on a human level. Make sure you know who the person is who is your point of contact, with a phone number for them and an email address. And this way you know who to talk to when you run to an SEO emergency. However frequent those happen. I'm not sure they happen too often, but I've run into them. Where I find things like spider traps on a site and a solution to fix them, and think that might be a good thing to tell them about before I send an audit to them, so that they can maybe fix those types of problems.
Or something happens in Webmaster Tools and you need to have a contact point to say, oh, hello, we got some issues here.
So a lot of the questions I'll ask in that initial kickoff meeting aren't necessarily things that ask them about their future goals or about what we're going to be doing for SEO on their site, but are things that it's good to know beforehand, like what sites do you own? What URLs are they at? Because if someone expects you to do an audit on one site and they've got multiple sites tied to it, subdomains, things like that, you want to know what those are. I've started audits on sites and found links in those sites to different subdomains and different domains. And it's like you get to the point where you say, what did we contract for? What are we doing an audit on? And a lot of times these days, I'm not necessarily in the kickoff meeting, but I sent a big list of questions to the project managers who are, to give them a chance to ask those questions. And they're writing answers out for me on a client sheet to give me some idea of what's going on. I'll get those, and a lot of times with audits that I do on sites, I don't necessarily need too much information from the client, but it's good to have. And it's good to have some idea of what types of things I'll want to know if they have Google Search Console and Google Analytics and Big Webmaster Tools signed up for, and if we can get access to them. I also want to know if they've had SEO done on their site in the past and maybe what those campaigns covered. I can see what's on the site. I have no idea what their future plans are for the site. If they might have some products or services that they might be considering adding. And if they are, I'd like to know about those and maybe reasons why they haven't added them yet. I like to reach out on the human level, like I said, and ask them things like what things about their site do they like the most and which things do they like the least. I think it's good getting feedback on that type of thing because it's maybe better than asking them which are the most effective pages on a site, which maybe you can get a sense of from looking at a Google Analytics. So what do they actually like? Reach out on that human level. Get a conversation going about it. Ross, what types of things do you try to find out?
Well, you covered a lot of great ones there. Our process, because we do a lot of small and medium business, so we're trying to streamline things because frankly, we end up, we're not, every dollar is going to count. We want to make sure that we can be as efficient as possible. So we have an SEO intake form, one that's standard for organic, just a regular organic campaign, and also one for local and organic, considered sort of, I call it local SEO and then classic organic. It's the only way I can explain it to them. It seems it makes sense for them. So those are two very separate ones. A lot of things are similar, but the idea there, of course, is to get the info we need when we're doing the all the citations for them, all of the updating of all their online profiles, knowing what JSON LD to put on their pages, on and on and on. There's other questions too. We also have the login details we need for their sites, instructions for them, and I tell you, this is a stumbling block at times to add us to their analytics, their Google Search Console, and we have some extreme Luddites for clients at times. I mean, we love them to pieces, but it's a lot of work. And I tell you, if there's one thing that we would love to figure out, I mean, we've been doing this 20 years, and I still can't believe I haven't got this nailed, but is how to avoid those serious delays, because as soon as you require a client to do something, especially if they're not savvy or anything, it's pain. It's extremely painful, and it can put us off by a week, even more, on a start date. At any rate, that's another portion, I guess, of what we could talk about. But so we ask about that. I also want to know what their expectations are. It's a huge part for what we work with. Again, dealing with people who really don't know the industry that well. They come into it with so many expectations. It's just crazy.
Yeah, but see, that was kind of where I was started at the beginning, though. Is that part of the sales process? To me, that should be like managing client expectations is almost more part of the sales process, not the intake startup process. Now, again, some companies, again, like you're saying, might end up that way, but for me, that should have been done beforehand. Like, what are the expectations of that person coming in? I know in the intake, you're going to probably go over it again, but I would like to know that from my salesperson, which is me. But I'd like to know that before then.
Yeah,
I think
I do a lot of the expectations at the beginning, but we still dive into them again. Frankly, because we find we have to hammer a lot of this home. We get into a little more, I guess, fleshing that out, determining what exactly they can expect, as much as you can be exact in this case. Sorry, I let her cut you guys off. Go ahead.
I think you're managing those expectations with the kickoff meeting. You may have started that process during the negotiations over budget and pace of work and so on, but you want to reinforce that. You want to streamline everything. If you have a management system like Basecamp or something where you're going to communicate with them, you want to make sure they're able to access it and make sure that's covered in the kickoff meeting.
Now, where would you guys put technology aspects? Meaning, what's the CMS? What's the cart? Things like that. Is that a sales thing or is that an intake thing? Like, meaning
That's
after the sales are done? Sorry?
That's sales. And then getting deeper into that, like typically if we see a lot of confusion around what they have, like it's pretty easy to tell. A lot of times they're like, I'm not sure. Or I had a client last week, or potentially didn't even know his website. So that's bad. But, when we get to those situations, we're like, we're not doing anything without an audit.
And again, okay, so the sales process, you might ask, do we have what's your analytics package? What is, do you have access to, Search Console? But the intake process, this is where we start to ask for access to that, correct? Is that going to be like one of the things we want right up front, obviously, for the audit process?
Yeah, definitely for the audit process. And we have it in our intake forms as well, which we do for an audit as well. Even if it seems more for a campaign, we're still going to do the intake, because if sometimes we find out stuff we didn't even know because maybe it wasn't answered. Sometimes you ask questions and they get diverted to another question or whatever. So those are important part of our ticks and balances and all that. So checks and balances.
And it leads to almost instantly actionable items. Like if they give us access to Google Search Console, having the ability to go in there and make sure an XML sitemap has been submitted is something I try to do, because sometimes it doesn't have too much data in it yet. And if it has an XML sitemap, it maybe has a chance to start crawling some of that stuff.
It has warnings. And they don't go to Google Search Console much.
Yeah. So you want to check to see if there are any manual warnings. Because that would be a bad thing.
Yeah. I think I do things a little bit differently than yous. Generally, if I was in this, because I do pretty well everything myself, during the sales process, I've been on the phone running Screaming Frog over a site during the sales process. So by the time I get to what we're talking about, all that's in place. As soon as someone says I'm buying or I want to hire you, the first thing I do is I say, great. I attach my Google Search Console verification file. I figured out that it's the same for every site. So you can just hand them the same file every time. The good thing about that is that when you're done, they just go and remove that file and you're done. It doesn't require development, going in and removing, all the normal. Makes it really easy. And I read somewhere where GA and GSC should be running two different ways. In other words, you're logging in to, you're getting a, collaboration or whatever access to GA, but you've got developer, you've put a file in that way the two are opposite. Because if you do it, if you don't do it like that, it was explained to me that the person who has access to GA can also get access to the
no, because Doc was just saying on the G Plus thread that access to GSC and GA, just like you, Terry, his sales process. See, I don't go there because once I start digging into all that, now I'm literally outlaying, and I had one point a month ago that I had 5 different proposals to do and stuff like that. Once I start digging that far and it doesn't sign off, and I'm throwing away time I could be spending on clients and stuff, like, and that's just me, but I'm not even going that far. Like, what do you need? What do you want? And I will, I'll put a proposal out there saying, an audit price and this and that, and they'll itemize stuff. And then they want to go for one, then great. I'm not even digging in that far during that process. I won't anymore because I've literally spent 4 or 5 hours on a proposal, and I'm doing I went 1 for 8. I went 1 for 8 last month, dude. Meaning I signed 1, 8 went in the trash. And if you're talking, 4 hours of that crap on 8, that's a lot of time I'm throwing down the tubes. You know what I mean?
Wouldn't spend 5 hours on a proposal.
Yeah.
And I work with the team, which means somebody does sales, I look at the site. I'll run Screaming Frog instead of them.
Yeah.
And I'll come up, I'll look at the site and see what works, what doesn't, come up with a list of maybe 10 or 12 points, if there are that many, that they can mention during that sales call.
All right, so here's an elephant in the room that we haven't actually touched on yet, which is the School of Van Horn, is where I learned it 8 years ago. Is follow the money, Terry. That's what you taught me.
Yeah.
Is again conversion points, and I mean primary and secondary. Obviously, primary conversion points for anyone listening is what the client sells or what their main goal is, and secondary could be like building mailing lists and things of that nature, growing social followings and whatever. You can have primary and secondary goals. So to me, again, that's how they're going to make money. So part of my intake process is somewhat heavily reliant on those, because that's how I'm going to be judged at the end of the day. It's the old offshore, I can get you #1 rankings, but if that ranking doesn't make anybody money, then that client's going to go broke. And if you're, I always tell my kids, if I'm, they say, what do you do for a living, Dad? I say I rent businesses, because if I make them an extra 10 grand a month, they have no problem giving me 4 of that, So, you guys want to touch on that, Ross? Go nuts, because to me, I think part of my intake process is somewhat heavily reliant on what are the conversion points and what are they looking at, how are they going to make money.
Dave, can I just add why I did things like that? I learned that at SEO Pros. Know what the goals of the site are for the owner, because most of the people that called me and complained didn't know what the SEO was going to do for them. They just knew that they didn't rank, right? So a lot of times it was due to something wrong with the site. Like I had people that I just told them, look, your robot text file, it's blocking all the search engines. That's why you can't rank.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I don't care if you're charging $1,000 a month or $10,000 a month. If you're not bringing in more revenues from your efforts than they're paying you, eventually you're out of a job. Anyways, so yeah, Ross, do you guys look at, like, what is the conversion pain points and what are they looking to accomplish?
Yeah, well, and that's part of what I guess I wrapped up into expectations. I touch on all that when I'm doing the call. The first thing I say to a client is it's almost right off the bat is we're not here to state your rankings. We're here to get you business. So it's a matter of, and that comes down to what they've done in the past, how much is already set up. And again, we deal with spectrums of knowledge that are just mind-boggling. Some have none, some have a ton. And that really informs the entire process. But once we know that, let's say they can talk a bit e-commerce lingo, we will have a feeling that they have some data points already set up. We'll obviously be looking at this deeper, but that initial, because we're talking about the sales call at this point, right? I mean, this is a key part of it. Even though we weren't going in that realm, that's really what we're talking about. And then we deal in it deeper when we get into the intake. Yeah, I mean, if we're not making the money, that's why we do a contract, but it's really just a matter of stating what we're going to offer, make them feel comfortable, set out the pricing. And then after, we ask for 3 months, let's say, minimum. We think it's going to take longer. 6 months is what our statement is, but we don't want them ever to feel tied in if they don't feel that this is going in the right direction. Who wants a client that's not happy like that? That's
not at all.
No.
Yeah.
And that's why it just kills me when they tell me that their last company tied them in for 12 months and they weren't getting results. I'm like,
well, it's funny. Bill and I were talking before the show about I've seen agency talking 12 to 18 months and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, if we do talk like that, we never tie them to it. We're saying that's our the time we expect you're going to need. So, stick with it. We're going to give you lots of reports. We're going to make you feel comfortable about the whole process. And if any time you don't feel comfortable, first tell us. And then if that gets past that point, which it doesn't, but if it does, well, we're not going to hold you to it. It's just no point. How about I wouldn't even want to come into work if I had clients like that.
And Bill, I know we talked about last week on one of the shows. It's so funny because you and I do both of it, so I don't know whose. But we were talking about the whole keyword research and that whole topic we got onto the other day. So, when you're doing intake stuff, are you looking, as your company and you, are you looking at conversions as well as keywords and tying those together again to show some efficacy or some value in the service?
I've worked with clients during kickoffs to do SWOT analysis for them. What are their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, their threats, to see if they're covering all the things that they could be covering in terms of business. And sometimes some clients aren't doing some of the things that you'd expect them to be doing. And helping them broaden their offerings by focusing on the right keywords and having the right content can enable them to expand to that. Like we worked with a limo company that was offering corporate shuttles to a lot of corporations, but they weren't doing much actual limo driving. And we helped improve their offerings in that area, which increased their return on investment tremendously.
I wish we had more opportunities to do SWOT. I love it. Frankly, when we get the call, again, dealing with small, medium businesses, I'm assuming you deal with larger ones too. But with small, medium, they're usually coming to us with the expectation just for SEO and a bit of web marketing. If I'm finding, because I do a lot of the sales, if I jump into SWOT or get anything like that, they get scared. They're just like, this is going to be too overwhelming. So I tend to get into that after I've gotten some trust with them. But I think it's great that you can do it right off the bat. I mean, that'd be dreamy.
I've had clients thank me for the chance to do that because they never have. And just the experience of going through it opened their eyes to some opportunities that they weren't taking advantage of.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I mean, it's a key part of any business, but I mean, I wonder what percentage of businesses actually do it. It's minuscule, I bet.
that also builds trust with your client. When you give them information like that, that's how you build trust.
And that's actually a really good point, Terry, because I think all of the intake process helps to build that trust. You know what I mean? Yeah. They've signed on with you because maybe they were referred or they found you somewhere. However, you met that client, and then the salesperson called you from the car 5 minutes before the meeting.
As you know,
but yeah, that intake process, and if you're asking those right questions, and if you're doing that intake process, it instills that confidence and builds that trust. Again, because the reason I kind of started this session was because a lot of younger guys are very nervous about this stuff, and I think that's part of it. Is a strong intake process builds that trust that gives you that space to go out and do your job and not have to be micromanaged by your client.
Yeah, one example I have right now
is do that kind of sorry. Go ahead, Ross.
No worries. I was letting you go ahead. But okay. Forestall this. So when I've got an example of a client where we got into that discussion and she had been recommended to me, or she'd come to me recommended, and that was great. And when I get that kind of an opening, I can jump into SWOT. That was one of the rare instances where I can just jump right in, and she's engaged me just to start before everything else begins. An initial consultation. So I'm going to get back to her with all the information that I've discovered, and then we're going to get into the SWOT. Because really, I got to have some, I feel, in order to provide any kind of research or great advice, is I like to have some research under my belt on their business, their market. I guess I just like to be a little more prepared when I'm doing that SWOT, because I'm not very good at that immediate thinking on my feet, I suppose. So that kind of research is great. And again, it's so much nicer when you get that consult and that trust right away because someone referred them.
Yeah. Now, would your intake process include identifying what they feel are their competitors? Because again, Terry and I Terry was talking about this the other day. I think it was yesterday in Bill's Hangout, but that what your client thinks are their competitors often aren't, because what's actually in your query space is your competitor, not who you intrinsically in your head think they are. But is that part of an intake process? Do you look at do you talk to them about who your competitors are? Because that eventually is going to become an issue.
Almost always. I wouldn't say every time, but almost always. It depends on where they're at. Sometimes they're already doing exceptionally well. I know they're already kicking ass. I don't need to get too involved in that. I'm trying to keep it focused on getting them where they need to be. And if I have some competitors, that's actually part of our intake form is competitors. But you're right. 90% of the time, at least, they don't have a clue. They're always picking people they think are their competitors.
Well, yeah, it's Bob down the road that he's been at the last 2 trade shows with, who's pissing them off at the booth 3 feet from him, not the guy who's in his query space. Bill, do you guys
not even have a website?
Yeah. Bill, do you guys actually look at competitors and stuff?
I got a phone call from a guy who was upset that his competitor was doing so well in search rankings, and I asked him what terms the guy was beating him on. He told me I did the searches and didn't see the competitor anywhere.
Oh yeah, he was logged in.
So he's been Terry. He's been going to their website too much, so he was logged into Google and it was personalizing it.
Right.
It's nice when the client does that.
Yeah.
And of course, Bill told him he was increasing his player weight so well.
I actually miss it. Back in there was a time when competitor analysis was a lot easier to sell. I used to do a lot of it, and I loved those because we'd be able to.
I still do, dude. The first things, we're almost at the bottom of the hour here, so I'm gonna actually start getting into the startup process. But yeah, no, that's one of the first things I do. Yeah, literally still.
Yeah, and I don't mean just analysis. Like I know you do higher end stuff too, but I don't mean just in the startup process of just determining, okay, here are your competitors. But what we would do is we would do full disassembly of their entire market.
Dude, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so since we're at the bottom of the hour, let's go here. Let's go here. All right, the next part we're gonna do, since we, again, we could do this for 4 hours. So the next thing that the younger folks wanted to know is, how do you get in and start a project? What are some of the first steps you do? You know what I mean? So let's start with this. 2 things I come in the door with are competitor analysis and an audit. which means I want to know the query spaces I'm in and who I'm up against, and I want to know the state of the website I'm working on. You know what I mean? It's fairly straightforward stuff. So the competitor analysis stuff, dude, I still to this day do exactly, I'm guessing what you, I'll come right back to you, Ross, but no, I mean, literally, I pick apart their site. I do almost like a mini audit on each of the top 5 or 6, whatever hub competitors. I'm looking at the readiness of the site. I'm looking at their links. I'm looking at their social channels. I'm looking at their content program. I literally pick apart any of the top guys that in their query spaces, not necessarily who they think are competitors. To this day, Ross, yeah, I still totally go anal on that, and I pick them apart from every possible angle. Is that what you're talking about?
It is. That was my favorite task when I did more of the hands-on stuff. I loved it. You felt kind of like a spy tearing everything apart. And I found amazing intel. It was so much fun. I would just I'm giddy now talking about it. But now I just find that in terms of price points, budgets are tighter now. I'm not finding a lot of people can afford to do those. We would charge about $3,000 to do a couple competitors.
Yeah,
nuts.
And I do top 5 or top 10 depending on them, and top 5 is about that. And I just maybe I'm just a better salesperson than you. You hiring? Maybe you need a little help on it. But yeah, no, dude. But I express how important that is. Because not only is you're also understanding the query spaces, you're understanding what's working in them and what's going on. Is it a content program? Is it evergreen content? Is it blog content? Where are the links coming from? How's their on-site readiness? I think to me, competitor analysis is still one of the first things I do coming in the door, man.
Now, one component of that we broke out into a different service called an authority building plan. So that's something we build into every one of our campaigns, and that is where we essentially do that. So but just about the evergreen, about the ideas for blog posts, we've got a number of tools we use, and we research anyone in the world. Let's say it's a custom furniture maker, and we will do a research on any similar business and what kind of content has done really well for them. Then we take that based on shares, and we can see that info, like all you guys can too. Once we get that information, we put it into a list of major ideas, evergreen ideas, one-off ideas, and then video, any sort of media, like podcast, video, whatever it might be. And we break that all down that way. And the major ideas, there could be about 8 of them. They would only pick one of them. They'd be so significant, they would require a significant amount of writing, planning, everything. But it's all built on that research of what content actually worked. It is proven, so that when they do dedicate that really valuable time to writing content, if they're doing it in-house, it's almost certain to work because they're doing it based on results. So yeah, we've kind of fragmented what we used to do always in competitor analysis. Now, I might just hire you.
But no, I just find that funny because again, I gotta say this, but I'm out in these groups and people looking, where do I go to learn SEO? Where do I go? These are the kind of topics you don't actually hear talked about, literally. And it's funny that I know Terry does it, I do it. Apparently now you do. Bill, is competitor analysis any kind of part of your startup process with your company? If not you,
it's not really something that we do too much at the beginning of a campaign with. We often focus primarily upon the client's site and how it can be improved. I do a in-depth, detailed audit of the site, and that often leads to a bunch of recommendations for changes and updates, which are carefully prioritized and explained why they're important. And that often leads to a bunch of Basecamp-based tasks that get worked upon for a few months out after an audit.
So a lot like you and I were talking in the green room. You kind of do things with the short-term, long-term activities, and then prioritizing things to work on. Is that what you guys are doing as well?
Right.
Fix the site and then rank the site and then
So let's move on to the audit process. So again, competitor analysis and audits are 2 of the first things I advise everyone. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something on the competitor analysis. Ross, you made a good point. One of my main things that I look at now is price points. I look at what part of my intake thing is I want to know their best margin products, where they think they make their money, because they do know that. They know what's selling. That sort of stuff. And then I take that and look at price points. Because let's face it, the internet is about price points now.
Right.
If you don't have good prices, you aren't going to sell anything. So I can drive a ton of traffic to the site.
Well, I'm just going to play Ammon here. I'm going to play Ammon here. I'm going to play Ammon here since Ammon's not here. But he would say that if you're reasonably close in price and you're slightly more, you've got to have a different USP as far as, maybe better customer service, better delivery, or better whatever. So.
But you got to be in the ballpark. That's the thing. It's got to be in the ballpark.
To build upon that, the other thing I want to know is what types of emerging products, emerging goods, emerging technology do you have that you haven't introduced to the site yet for one reason or another? Is it too early to? Is there some reason why you haven't? Can we plan for that in future?
That's great.
That enables them to own a keyword space for a period of time.
Right.
Thinking.
Right. If you can be the owner of that keyword space, if you can be the originator of the terms that people use.
For first to market kind of thing in an SEO version. Ross, we got someone here that I think I'll throw it your way. Was asking on YouTube as far as getting great content is harder than pulling teeth. So again, is that not part of that competitor analysis that saying, look, these people are doing well because they're creating content? Is that a way to motivate someone? I think what they want to know is how do you motivate someone to buy into a content strategy?
Excuse me. Yes, and it's yeah. We should look at a group hug here. No, it's horrible doing that. Now, what we do is I make it. Part of my rewinding a little bit. Part of my sales process is that if you're going to work with us, this is a partnership of sorts. If you don't have the money for us to do this work for you, like the writing and such, we have to have you commit to doing these particular tasks, and part of it is content. And I mean, no one wants a campaign not to do well. So if a client isn't doing their job and they're not doing the content, what we say to them is, we're going to be on your ass. We're going to say, you had to have this done by this date. Can you please throw us X amount of dollars to have it written for you? If it's possible. Of course, sometimes the client's knowledge is too broad and or too strong that they'd have to have written it themselves, or it's too technical. But most of the time we can get it written. So we just hold them to these things, and we try and find excellent writers. It's not the cheapest writing by any stretch.
Any means, no, dude.
No,
but again, I think that becomes back to the sales process almost. Do you have a client that you feel is going to have the budget to compete? Yeah. But I guess that's a different animal for a different show. But yeah, to the person asking on YouTube, yeah, that you got to encourage them to buy in by saying, if you want to compete with XYZ, then this is, we've looked at this query space. You do that competitor analysis or a query space analysis, whatever you want to call it. And you're highlighting what's working, what they're doing that's working, what's garnering the links. Because funny enough, you guys can all agree, most people come to us at least get links. I need links. My competitor has more links. Like even the dumbest SEO clients I have still seem to know about links. So.
It's because they got so many damn emails about it.
Yeah, and you're not joking there, by the
way. And that's practically all their education. And I can't blame them. They get constantly bombarded by all these, and it's always
it's like the clients that send you some article. It's like the clients who send you some article they saw in Search Engine Journal or something. Are we doing this? And it's like,
I charge extra for those clients.
I could. We get the ones where we get people. They'll get requests. Of course, we see these every day. Even you guys probably get them, just like me. We can help you improve your website.
Yeah.
We notice you've got these issues wrong with it. So I get my clients emailing me those, going, "Well, I've got these issues. Can you please something like?" You don't have.
All right, so let's wander back. Let's wander back to since we answered that for him, and let's wander back to the audit process. Okay, so like Bill and I were just intimating that we tend to break them down into actionable elements. Obviously, that's what you got to do. But I'll break them down into short and long term. As far as if it's a total rewrite of your site structure, that's a long term thing to work on. If it's something simple as title tags, short term, then I'll prioritize them. A, B, C, D. High priority. What do you guys kind of do with your audit process? Is there, Ross?
Actually, I'm sorry, I got distracted by something there, but I'll let.
Ooh, butterfly! Ooh.
Yeah. Actually, it was a cat. I was like, "Ooh, I wonder if he's got fish in there." Oh dear.
So is audit process is one of your early tasks, startup tasks?
Yes. Yeah, we always have audits. I shouldn't say always. Most of the time, we have audits. In some rare cases, we've had to break them down again to segment for small businesses because we deal with really small businesses. So we'll get a what we call a website review, and then we've got the website audit.
Right. I call it a comprehensive audit and a general audit. It sounds like the same thing. My general audit costs less if they can't afford the big one, which is sort of a 20,000 foot view of things to work on, whereas the comprehensive audit is the 50-page, anal page-by-page things.
Exactly. Yeah. So that allows us to sort of get our foot in the door for people with smaller budgets, because our goal here is we've had clients that have been with us the full 20 years. We want to make sure that we can build that relationship and help them improve so they can then start spending more and everyone wins. So I find just getting that foot in the door is absolutely important. And that's how we do it in terms of the audits.
Terry, how do you, I don't know, you and I used to do audits together, so I assume you're pretty much the same as I am still these days, as far as actual elements go.
Most of the sites now I do, it's, I'm just looking for why something isn't ranking. So the audit is not very extensive. It's run Screaming Frog over it, find all the technical issues, and then bring in Majestic and look at the links and say, well, here's why you're not ranking. These technical issues, and this is where your linking is at. I suggest you do X first, etc. And in the generally, when I start a job, I already know what the issues are with the site. So the type of site audit I do is like very simple.
Yeah, so the 20,000 foot view kind of thing.
Yeah. And whether so for instance, on one of my, let's say, it would be part of the monthly startup cost, basically, because the person can't afford a full audit. So I'll go to Majestic, see how many, basically the 20,000 foot view of Majestic, looking at topics, citation and trust flow, number of links, ratio of links to domains, number of seed blocks, how many links are supplemental, which is a new thing that I didn't realize they had until just recently. And that's where there's more than one link on a page to the same site. So
Bill,
you're on that page more than once.
Bill, I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume you're kind of more the anal type like me. Like, are you looking at like the technology itself, everything from, various, JavaScripts and whatever? Are like speed issues part of your audits these days? Like, how deep are you going? Because I know audits is kind of like you're like me. That's a lot of what you do these days. So, like how deep are you going with your stuff?
Usually, really deep. I want to have a good sense of how everything's working together, how it's playing together, what might be impeding a site in terms of success.
Do you look at the Screaming Frog average for the whole site and then take a look down the pages to see if there's any that stand out as being abnormal?
Average?
Yeah. If you look in the diagram, when
Yeah.
you look at the response times on the pages,
Okay, so you're talking page speed.
yeah, it's got an average for the site. So I look at that and, you know, say, okay, that's reasonable.
Right.
Like an e-commerce site is not going to be same as an information site with no graphics on it, right?
Actually, split audits into two parts now. The rest is the whole site and then a page speed section.
Ah,
So I'm looking at page speed for all the pages of the site.
so in other words, you're probably going for why the pages are slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
For me, it's like I'm finding out, is there an issue? And part of my monthly work would be to fix that issue. I imagine Ross is similar.
yeah, well, Bill, I'm actually curious. What are you using to run page speed on a number of pages like that? Because that can be kind of time intensive and resource intensive. Are you using a particular product with a plan?
I'm looking at a few. I'm looking at GT metrics. I'm looking at Google Analytics.
Okay. Now, so GT metrics, I don't actually, I mean, I've used it, but I don't think I've ever had a paid plan on it that has one. Does it run for an entire site and give you all the metrics for each page, or are you?
It gives you averages.
Oh, okay.
It scores different things. It does a page speed score. It does a Y slow score. It does a few other scores.
And I'll assume that you're the same as us and that you pretty much scorn the Google page speed test.
I haven't scorned it. It's just changed around recently too.
Oh, has it? Because it's been so useless up till now. I've just found it. The data it's frustrating as hell.
If you haven't looked at it recently, check it out because it has changed a little bit.
Right. Right. Cool. But yeah,
Ross, just so you know, I use Screaming Frog for my audits, and it has page speed for every page, and then there's a bigger graph for the whole site.
Oh, that's kind of embarrassing because I use it all the time and I haven't noticed that.
Did you know you can hook it up to GA Analytics too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but I didn't. Is the page speed? Are those page speeds? Page speed stats in Screaming Frog reliable? Are they as good as something like?
I found them to be fairly accurate. Like for me, I also want to look at a few things. Like Google can say a site is slow, but you and I know as developers that I can make a page seem like it's loading faster than it is by rendering the page in sections so people see stuff, you know. So you got to take that into account as well.
Yeah, so when Screaming Frog does the test, it's not actually rendering the images, so it's really just server time and raw data download, right?
And I think at the end of the day, Ross, you know, I am never a one-tool guy. You know, I always cross-reference everything. I use GT metrics. I use a few other things, and kind of like Bill, I like to cross because amazingly, no tool ever comes up with the same data, right?
I spend a ridiculous amount of money on too many tools.
Well, no, but that's how we get suckered, though, Ross. Because you know, Majestic says one thing about links, and Ahrefs says another thing, and then Search Console says another thing. So you get stuck in this loop. And the same thing with page load stuff. And it's literally like I can have 3 different tools tell me 3 different things. It's hard to really know what the hell's going on sometimes.
My issue with the Google tool was it wanted you to shrink files to the point where they pixelate it. Like, you know, like they don't care that that the image is now inferior, like degraded to
okay, well, but since we're talking about like quick wins and stuff to start up on, you know, going past the audit process now, since we're like, you know, running out of time. Well, there's simple things like some CMSs. How many times I'm sure we've all seen a client who put some picture in that was 2,000 pixels wide, and then WordPress or whatever, you know, displays it at this side. I mean, those are easy things you can go and find. You know what I mean? That's stuff that you can go and fix, you know, pretty easily.
Yeah.
What are some
plugins that can help with that too? That do a half decent job of it.
Yeah, well, there's also just, turning the pictures out, resizing them, optimizing them, putting them back. There's always that option.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of or have dealt with a lot of interior designers, and they have so many pictures.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, we have to outsource it sometimes. It's ridiculous.
Well, no, you do. And that's part of the process we do around here on our end. It's like I will literally, forget plugins and all that. Because, again, you're just more code bloat and all that kind of crap. And, or what about WordPress and certain plugins and you get that code bloat going on when this could be much more simplified process, like tear some of this stuff out and compress some images, compress JavaScript files, compress CSS files. There's so much stuff that, like there's how many sites I know of that are actually have load speed because their Divi theme has what's that Google font, which doesn't even need to be there because they're not even using Google Font. But meanwhile, it's part of the load process, and they're not even using it. It's like, oh god, why is it tear that out?
What about
why is it
loading plugins that aren't even being used on the page? Here's something that, just for an idea, I had a theme, and I decided I would just build this exact same page on Bootstrap. Went from 1,500 and some odd lines of code to 150. But it grew when I put in the special coding, so I had a much better mobile experience because I had written the code 3 different ways, made the images so they shrunk on mobile, and it was a smaller picture, not just the dimensions changed and that sort of thing. So it loads a lot faster.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's why I think WordPress.
All right, nice. We got a nice question on Facebook, but I'm sorry, on YouTube, but I'm gonna say that at the end. So everyone give some good examples of some quick wins, and what I call quick wins again is part of the reason I started this particular hangout was a lot of the younger guys and people like that were very nervous coming in the door with a client because the client wants to see something. So now again, that's part of the sales process and managing expectations. We'll leave that over there. But one of my favorites, and I was talking to Bill about this before the show, is internal link ratios. So, once you've identified your core terms that you're looking for and you've done your page mapping of terms to pages, I'll go and look at the internal link ratios. If it's Screaming Frog or if it's through Google Search Console, it doesn't matter. That you'll often find that the internal linking navigation to these pages is down here. And if you restructure that a little bit, you can literally start to boost some pages in very short order with something as simple as that. So I don't know, we'll go with Bill. Do you have any quick wins or things that you find you can do within a relatively short period of time to improve things?
Okay, during that intake meeting, if you ask the client if there are any issues about their site that bother them that could be addressed, write those out and see if you can address them and make it a part of your audit that you return to them. I had a car dealership that had a knowledge graph that showed for the repair shop. They wanted it to show for the car dealership. When you search for their name, though, the knowledge graph showed their auto repair section. They weren't too pleased with that. We managed to get that changed to mention the car dealership itself, and they were thrilled.
Well, now you just made me feel like a jerk because, well, apparently I am, but I never even thought of that. So yeah, managing the emotional pain points, like what matters to them, regardless if it's a conversion or a ranking thing, finding out what is upsetting them as far as their visibility in this SERPs. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
See, I hadn't even thought of that. Thank you. See, I learned something today too. I love these shows. See, that's really good. I'm gonna actually start doing that. So I'm such a jerk. I don't even listen to my clients.
Yeah. One of the things I've found is if you add location markup to a site that's fighting for local rankings, that usually gives instant results.
Ross, do you got some
Yeah.
Things
So
that you can advise people that are like kind of quick wins again. Like think about the young SEOs who maybe they've got their first 2, 3, 5 clients or something. They're still nervous about wanting to do a good job and don't know where to start. Not necessarily where to start, but where to show some efficacy in the early month or two, you know.
well, there's always exceptions to every rule, but in this case, I oftentimes will find sites have tried to condense all of their information onto just a couple pages. So they'll have multiple completely different services listed on one long page. Those are great examples of ones that should be broken out into separate pages. Not all the time. Again, there's exceptions, but in many cases, we break them out and then we have the ability to target each page more appropriately towards their particular service. And that also helps if you add review markup for each service, if you're doing a local business on those pages. You get specific reviews for those specific services. Google likes that more. You have a better chance of getting some review stars in search results. That's gold. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that stands out. In addition, and this is external to the site, but again, we do a lot of local. As my other business is dental marketing, so local, but is looking at their Google My Business. Oh my God, some of these people don't even look at them. Even if they're not if they have them verified, they often don't look at them and realize that perhaps someone has made a suggested change to their profile, which is damaging. And you make that change and bam, they are back in the rankings and they're kicking ass. It can be that simple. It's startling how simple it can be. Those are my best ones I can think right off the top.
What about
one that I do first month, Dave, and you know this one. I go to Google Search Analytics, which every SEO should do every month, and look at positions, what their click-through rates are, and etc. Because there's always a lot of low-hanging fruit there.
So
yeah, and just a note for anybody listening now or in the future, you really got to divide that out, by the way, because what Google will do is if you actually dig into that average position stuff, Google will actually throw up 3 or 4 pages at different times to see which one might work better. So you got to be careful with that average position thing and break that out. Again, different show.
I like to do it with keywords. I don't pay a lot of attention to the.
Do you guys find that title tags are easy tweaks early on? That someone hasn't either got too long a one or not focused enough one or overly confusing one. Do you guys think that going through and reviewing title tags early on is something that can show benefits in the short term?
it's something that I point out in an audit if a site has some really short titles that aren't very descriptive, that aren't persuasive, engaging. People are less prone to click on them and go through. If we go back to looking at the Search Console to see if they have high impressions and low clicks,
Right.
when you're seeing a page with 1,500 impressions and 3 clicks, you've got an opportunity.
One major thing to add too is, and this goes back to let's make the money, is okay, well, let's get them some traffic. But how many of them don't have a call to action on their pages? Most. If they do,
I know. Like Ross, I swear, the last 4 or 5 years, if there was any second passion for me outside of SEO, it's been CRO.
Yes.
And then again, that's the school of Van Horn that regardless if I'm getting them rankings, if they're not closing, if they're not converting, I'm still out of a job in 6 months. You know what I mean? It's so, I'm in this, split testing, and I've been into CRO stuff and call to, all of that, even SERP call to action as well as on-site and everything. Like, I think that is a really good marriage, SEO and CRO, because really you can bring all the relevant traffic you want, but if it doesn't convert because of the website owner's setup, you're still out of a job because they're going to blame it on you. So
one of the best reasons to rank a page for an informational term is so that you attract people to that page to see a call to action on that page that leads to some type of transactional opportunity.
Right, which is a damn good point. Is if you've got a blog or a content strategy of evergreen or blogs or whatever, you've got to utilize that traffic to build not only authority but bring them into the rest of the site if you're on an e-commerce site or whatever. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that CRO thing you mentioned, I dream of getting the, I mean, we rarely do get the clients that have enough willpower to spend the money so we can actually invest that much time. I mean, we do
Dude,
basic
I'll even do
CRO.
a pro bono on a given product page just to convince them. You know what I mean? Like, here, before this is your, e-commerce data analytics. Here's mine after what I did. Now, would you like to invest the money? Like, I would literally pro bono a page for that, because I agree. Like it's pulling teeth sometimes. They don't quite get it, but it's worth it. And speaking of which, Google, if you're watching, seriously, 360, I'm gonna kill somebody. Like, you Google. I'm sorry, Google Optimize, you get 3 experiments for free. After that, you got to go up to Google 360, which is 150 grand a year. Can I just have something in the middle?
No.
No, apparently not.
Well,
God,
that's
irritating.
Google. Let's only give it to the guys who have a whole lot of money. It's not fair. It's bullshit.
No, but Google Optimize is the bomb. You can literally drag and drop WYSIWYG editor.
Well, no, it's
just so
not,
much
because
fun.
it's not inclusive. So it's bullshit.
Yeah,
It's a good tool, but it's inclusive. You know what I mean? And I know that stuff.
I talked to my client about it last week, and she laughed her ass off when I told her 150 grand a year. So.
Yeah, like how many sites can really afford to spend?
No.
To spend 150 grand, you got to be making millions on your website, not on your business, but just on your website.
Yep.
It's so inclusive that, it's like Twitter. I quit using it when they started saying, "Oh, only if you can spend 100 grand, you can advertise here." Well, you know what? I got no time for you anymore.
All right, well, we're at the top of the hour, so I'm just going to run. David Schaefer had an interesting little point here on YouTube, so we'll finish up with this. So he was saying recommending content strategies and pointing out ROI for the consumer. Now, doesn't that really come down to it at the end of the day? Like, we've talked about this whole making money thing and startup and everything else, and isn't that what we're trying to do at all times? Like, and again, even in this short-term startup process, because regardless of what they're spending, so many guys, especially smaller guys who are going to have smaller businesses, and actually, Ross, you're probably good to speak to this because you just said you do a lot of mom and pop local stuff. Is showing that ROI something that is inherent in the early startup, or is that just something you have to manage expectations on? Like, are you really going to show ROI in the short term?
Again, we get really excited when we see the ones that haven't really done a good job, and there's lots of low-hanging fruit, to overkill that phrase. But if we don't have that, then we're intensely what's the word for it? I guess realistic about their expectations. We have to be. We don't want them to ever have any other ones. So if that was the question, that was really what we get to. We just want to make sure it's extremely clear to them that it's not going to happen overnight. And we do definitely try to give them as much detail as we can in terms of conversions. Oftentimes, and this is often for us, we get people who don't do a good job of tracking conversions outside of the website, which frankly, a lot of them go by phone call.
No, I get that as well. Like, literally, that's one of the things I'm doing now is waiting for this site to be finished, relaunched, so I can track everything and show them what is going on, because they just don't have a clue.
Yeah, like we're in the midst of getting everything properly set up so we can track even just a simple phone calls from Google My Business, just using some phone call tracking. Just for the small businesses that, they don't have big pay-per-click campaigns, so we don't have call tracking for them already. We're just going to give them a base product so they can at least track the phone calls from Google My Business, which I think is going to be quite exciting for our clients.
Yeah, I don't want to do it through Google My Business. What I do is I make every phone number clickable. Mm-hmm. Then I add a event to it, so I know what page they clicked on and what phone number they clicked on, what page they were on. Everything. And that also means when they say, well, we're not getting phone calls, I'll say, yes, you are. Here's the pages you're getting them from. Yep. Your person is not asking the right questions when they're doing their intake. Yeah. Because this tells me that.
Well, the thing I like about the call tracking now is that, well, I've always done this, but is the fact that they record so that they can go back and listen to see what happened with that phone call, and they can learn a ton from that, from these people that are in house that are doing the calls, and like they shouldn't be answering like that, or why didn't they mention this service, or there's a ton of learning just from that, and as long as we can tie ourselves to be the person that offered them that solution, we find we get a lot of trust and they stick around.
Bill, you had that one example where you had that one example they were spending whatever, I think 150 grand a month on PPC, and you guys, turn that around into SEO in a fairly short term to show ROI on that.
They were spending $100,000 a month on PPC. We introduced SEO, ranked pages for certain terms, and they turned off the PPC. They broke traffic records and got more business than they had been. And I was going to add, we're talking about ROI. Local search can be a great equalizer. I worked with a law firm. He had a nice office. He was a solo practitioner, so he didn't have 300 partners, but he was outranking large law firms, and in Delaware, in corporate law type things, where people were asking him to review contracts that were Delaware based at like $500 an hour. He was getting calls, he was getting referrals, and people were finding his site. He was outranking some of the courts in Delaware in search results. So people would search for the courts, see him, click on his site, and contact him.
Yeah, and the guy on YouTube here, he was actually trying to talk about justifying content strategy, but I want to just move to the ROI thing. Another story that I was talking to Bill about before this show started. I've got like a hair extensions lady in San Antonio, Texas, and her whole business is local because you know what I mean. It's a hair salon. She's probably got 30 links. She's got 45 Google reviews and about 40 citations. She's ranking number 2 and doing a great business. So links isn't always the myopic thing. So again, in this local equalizer, like you're talking about, that ROI on that local SEO and that ability to be in that place pays off. And it's not about running around getting links. And again, she's got about 120 blog posts, which her competitors don't. So going to touch on the content thing. So right. Yeah, we get myopic sometimes on links, and that's not always what it is. It's not what works.
So with local, location prominence is more important than page rank. And location prominence is a matter of how many citations you have, how many links you have. Links don't matter more than citations, except if a link includes the name of your business or your location, it'll help show that you're authoritative for that business, which is what makes that business show up in local search results as the business for that, or the site for that business. And reviews will count location prominence too.
Yeah. In regards to your PPC point, Bill,
yeah.
I would say if someone is doing PPC, I always look at what ads they're running, etc., because that's always a good clue as to what click, what your calls to action should be. Because if something's getting a high click rate, they're saying something that those people are interested in. So yeah, that you also can identify what people are going to buy too. So that's a good point as well.
The focus of PPC campaigns tends to be on transactional queries, right?
Yeah.
So if you're asking people who do PPC for keywords to help with SEO, they're not going to be able to help with informational queries. And because they don't do ads in informational queries, right, because they don't expect too many clicks on them.
Yeah.
So if you run informational queries in your SEO, you want to include a call to action on those informational pages that go to something that might be tied to actual transactions, because you're building your own funnel that way.
Yeah, or a drip campaign or something that they're going to, get engaged in because it's more detail on the topic they're researching.
Right.
Well, boys, oh, go ahead, man. I'll stay here all day, as long as you guys have nothing better to do.
I work with the incorporation.
Keep it coming.
Well, no. Ross has a show to do, in 45 minutes. So.
Well, actually, I have to get running anyway because I'm shorthanded today, and I've got a dentist appointment now. I had to cancel.
Oh, okay. Are you guys good for your show though? Don't need any guests today. You're good.
Oh, you're a dentist too, Ross?
No. My other company.
Brasco has me on
going for a minute there.
Brasco has me on speed dial whenever needed. So
yes, no, I appreciate it. No, usually if I'm not there, the show doesn't happen. I think John doesn't want to host.
Oh, geez. Well, you ever need someone who's chatty? I know a guy.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, guys. Let's wrap it up then. Anybody who wants to come into the green room, we'll probably be sitting around for a little bit here after the show. If you want to come in and talk some more shit. So yeah, speaking of which, it's Ross actually does SEO 101 with John Carcutt every Monday on Webmaster Radio. Be sure to tune in. Myself and Doc Sheldon were on last week. The week before this, doing some forensic SEO chatter. Be sure to check that out. Yep. So are you doing anything else in the next little while, Ross, as far as speaking engagements, or are you just doing the show and working?
Yeah, just working. I'm maybe a couple speaking gigs coming up near the summer, but I try and avoid them if I can. Just keep grinding away and building the business.
There you go. See, I track him down, folks. Ross Dunn. I would tell you his Twitter account and Facebook handle, but if you're actual search geeks, there's this thing called Google. You put Ross Dunn in, step forth, and it'll probably tell you where to find him. So
there you go.
We'll just leave it there.
At Ross Dunn everywhere. Ross Dunn. There you go.
Yeah, well, yeah. It always kills me. Anyways, we'll leave that for another day. And thank you very much, Bill. As always, buddy, thank you for coming along.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it, man. Keep up the good work. SEO by the Sea, folks. And obviously, he's got some stuff he's writing over on Go Fish Digital lately. Actually, he had an article this week. It's kind of cool. And Terry, there you go. Search Geek Speak for another year and a half. We'll be back in a year and a half, folks. Glad you enjoyed it.
Anybody who has the app on Libsyn, they'll be able to pick it up on iTunes, etc.
We'll get the MP3 up the next day. Yep.
And there'll be a new blog coming up soon with all of our shows, going all the way back. What, Dave? About a decade now?
Oh, God, dude. Yeah, at least, dude. Yeah, it's at least been 10 years. We started with podcasts, then we went to this video stuff around 2013 or something. So, we must have at least 500 of these damn things by now. So, all right, guys, thank you very much.
I convert it all, put it on. We're moving it to its own domain off of Libsyn is actually.
SEO Dojo Radio is going to have its own world now. And so thanks, guys, for the inaugural show. We're back after a year and a half, so thank you very much for joining us. And I hope any of the young fellers or anybody out there got something from it because, again, there's been so much between mentoring and people I talk to. A lot of the younger generation is kind of worried about this kind of stuff, like the actual, how do I do title tags isn't as it's scary to them as running a business and dealing with clients. And I think that's something that doesn't really get talked about enough. So there you go.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. Anytime you want me on, I'll be here.
All right. So, folks on YouTube and folks on the G Plus channel, I will be dropping a link to the green room. And good luck with the show today. If you actually get there, Ross, if not, if you need someone, just hit me up.
I will.
All right, guys. Thanks.